You're pregnant." The doctor's words had barely left his mouth when a chilling voice echoed from beyond the foreign prison gates. "Bonnie, the execution order has been issued. The sentence will be carried out in 3 days." She still clutched the pregnancy test slip she'd just gotten from the prison doctor, her fingertips turning white as she nearly crumpled the paper. On one side lay the quiet sprouting of new life, on the other, the countdown to death. Bonnie looked up at the sky as the cold wind stung her eyes, leaving no time for tears to fall. This whole charade played out like a script written with malice. And she was merely the scapegoat trampled underfoot. A year ago, she was the cherished wife Carter held in the palm of his hand, the Bonnie Demi spoke of with affection. Now, one is the husband who pushed her into hell, the other the white moonlight who stole her marriage, her identity, and everything she had. She once believed marriage was a sanctuary, friendship a refuge. Yet in the end, her love became a weapon in others' hands, and she herself a sacrificial offering to whitewash their sins. What a pity, no matter how meticulously they planned, they never anticipated she would become pregnant. What she never expected was that Bonnie wouldn't die. She would survive, clawing her way out of hell step by step, making everyone who owed her pay with blood for their crimes. Bonnie stared at the 2 pieces of paper in her hands. One was the hospital's prenatal examination form, the other a death warrant just delivered by the prison authorities. Her hands trembled, yet her gaze was colder than ever before. "Congratulations." The guard sneered at her. "Pregnant on one side, death sentence on the other, you're one lucky bastard. Your execution can be postponed." Bonnie said nothing, only gently folded the 2 papers together and tucked them into her pocket. Her heart, however, grew colder by the inch. 3 months ago, she had woken up in Carter's arms. He kissed her forehead and said, "Bonnie, I'll never let you suffer." 3 months later, she sat in the cold cell, listening to the murmurs outside. Is she Carter's wife? The woman from that financial fraud case? I heard she laundered billions and colluded with offshore funds. She smiled, her lips turning pale. Had she truly harbored such thoughts, she wouldn't have been manipulated to the point of nearly losing her life. All of this was a trap woven by her beloved husband himself. Carter, the man she loved from college all the way to the altar. For him, she quit her job and cut off contact with all her girlfriends. Yet on the day of the incident, he pinned all the evidence of guilt on her. Though she was overseas on business at the time, local police had already detained her and locked her up in this foreign prison. Bonnie handled the bookkeeping. I knew nothing about it. She acted on her own, setting up those offshore accounts. I only just discovered it. I'm shocked too. I love her, but I can't condone criminal activity. He tearfully defended himself before the media, while she was pushed into the deepest abyss. And the most ironic part was that among the prosecution's witnesses stood a name all too familiar, Demi. The young girl who once called her Big Sis Bonnie, who lived in her home, wore her clothes, and ate the meals she cooked, now stood beside Carter as a key state witness. Bonnie still remembers that day when, after the trial, she overheard Demi say to Carter outside the interrogation room, "Carter, once Bonnie is dead, we'll be free." In that moment, she finally understood that her marriage had been nothing but a scheme orchestrated by the 2 of them from start to finish. She lowered her gaze and touched her abdomen. It was a pawn she had deliberately planted. She knew that if a woman was pregnant at the time of execution, the death sentence would be legally postponed. So on the night before she was imprisoned, she secretly signed an artificial insemination agreement and, with a friend's help, completed the implantation. She had staked everything on this child, and now her gamble had paid off. But that was nowhere near enough. She would survive, not merely to live, but to exact her revenge. "Bonnie, you have a visitor." The moment the guard opened the cell door, the woman stepped forward in high heels, her stride light yet bold. She wore a perfectly tailored designer suit, a soft smile playing at the corners of her lips, just like the well-behaved girl she once was. "Demi." "Bonnie," she called softly, a hint of smugness in her eyes. "How are you?" Bonnie saw right through the carefully crafted facade. Demi paused, then suddenly smiled. "Oh, and I'm pregnant too, 3 months along. Carter's been wonderful. Once you're gone, I'll take good care of him for you." It was as if someone had lit a bomb in Bonnie's ear. In that instant, she understood Demi hadn't come to see her, she'd come to declare victory. But she wouldn't know that this time, Bonnie wouldn't concede defeat. Bonnie smiled faintly, her voice as thin as water. "You're pregnant? What a coincidence." She pulled the prenatal exam slip from her pocket and gave it a gentle shake. "I have a child now too. Demi, this time, I won't back down. She's already died once. Next, it's their turn to pay with their lives." "You're pregnant too?" Demi's smile froze on her face. Bonnie gently stroked her abdomen, her gaze as still as a stagnant pool, yet tinged with an indescribable ferocity. Yes. Just found out. The doctor said the fetal development is stable and healthy. Demi's expression changed instantly. This couldn't be. She had planned it flawlessly, Bonnie simply couldn't have conceived. Prison entry and exit physicals were extremely strict. How did she manage it? Demi forced a smile, took a step closer, and whispered, Bonnie, don't misunderstand me. I'm not here to provoke you. I just can't let go of you. So you wanted to show off before I die? Bonnie sneered. Tell me you're carrying Carter's child? You won? You've taken his place? Demi lowered her eyelids, adopting a look of vulnerability and hurt. That's not what I meant. I just wanted. You know I've always loved him, but I never intended to break you two up. Carter came to me first. She lifted her head, her eyes slightly reddened, tears welling up. Sis Bonnie, Carter really had no choice. He said you're too clever and too forceful, and he. So you two conspired to send me to the executioner? Bonnie cut her off, her voice icy cold. Demi finally dropped her fragile facade, her smile slowly tightening as her gaze grew colder by the second. So what if you're pregnant? It's just buying you a little more time. Carter's already pulled strings. Even if you drag this out for months, you'll still die in the end. You won't win, Bonnie. Really? Bonnie's eyes flickered. Suddenly, she pulled a small voice recorder from her sleeve and pressed play. I've always loved him, but I never intended to break you two up. Carter came to me first. You know I've always loved him. Truth is, Carter had no choice. He said you're too clever, too strong-willed. The recording echoed clearly through the conference room. Demi's face drained of color as she lunged forward to grab it. Are you out of your mind? Recording me? Bonnie's hand shot out in a swift backhand, smacking the back of Demi's hand. The recorder remained firmly clutched in her own palm. Thank you for confirming your relationship with Carter yourself. Bonnie rose calmly, offering a faint smile. Rest assured, I won't die. But you will soon. Demi laughed bitterly in rage. You want to overturn the verdict? How could you possibly win alone? I'm not alone. Bonnie turned and walked away, her voice light and detached. I have my child, and I have this recording. Most importantly, I've already died once, I'm not afraid to do it again. Her stride was resolute, as if she were no longer the Bonnie driven to the edge by everyone, but a vengeful spirit who had crawled out of hell, determined to drag her enemies one by one into the abyss. Demi froze in place, her face alternating between pale and ashen. She knew it, Bonnie had truly changed. This game had spiraled out of control. The moment Bonnie returned to the cell block, the entire dormitory fell silent for several seconds. Her pace wasn't hurried, yet it carried an oppressive weight. All the inmates instinctively parted to make way for her, everyone knew she'd just met with the big shot. And she, smiling colder than anyone else. She sat down, leaning against the cold wall, and pulled a small sticky note from the lining of her prison uniform. On it was a number and a code known only to her and a friend, C13. This was the only person outside prison who was still alive and willing to help her. She had saved the other person's life, and now it was time to repay the debt. Just as she was figuring out how to get the recording out, the guard suddenly came to notify her, Bonnie, come out. Someone's here to see you. Bonnie's eyelid twitched. If not Demi, then who else could it be? She rose slowly, and as soon as she stepped through the iron gate, her gaze locked onto a familiar figure. Carter. He wore a tailored suit, his appearance as handsome and composed as ever, while his lawyer stood impassively behind him, briefcase in hand. Bonnie. Carter frowned slightly, stepping before her with a look that screamed reluctant, but here I am. Heard you're pregnant? Did you come to congratulate me? Bonnie's lips curled in a mocking smile. A flicker of impatience crossed Carter's face. You know your situation. Don't try to outsmart me. Your pregnancy might delay your execution, but it won't save you. So why the rush? She leaned back in her chair, her gaze sharp. Afraid I'll spill the beans about you and Demi? Carter's eyes darkened briefly before he regained his composure. I'm here to give you one last chance. He paused, his voice turning cold. If you're willing to sign and plead guilty to all charges, I can work to get you another suspended sentence in court. You know I have connections. Bonnie chuckled softly, is it yours, or Demi's? Carter frowned, what are you talking about? Bonnie slowly pulled out the voice recorder and placed it on the table. Ever heard of this thing? Carter's expression changed abruptly. She pressed play, and Demi's voice filled the air once more. Truth be told, Carter had no choice. He said, "You're too smart, too strong-willed." Carter lunged to grab it, but Bonnie was ready. With a sharp snap, she pulled the recorder back. "Don't be impulsive." She sneered coldly. "I've already sent this one out. If you dare touch a single hair on my head, tomorrow the entire internet will hear how your Demi secretly badmouths you behind your back." A flicker of panic finally flickered in Carter's eyes. Seizing the moment, Bonnie pressed closer. "Carter, not only will I not die, but I'll make you bury the woman you love most with your own hands." Carter clenched his jaw. "Bonnie, you're out of your mind." "Yes, I'm crazy." Her gaze was like a knife. "But a madwoman has nothing to lose." She turned and walked away, leaving Carter standing there, his fists clenched so tightly they cracked. He finally realized that the Bonnie who had once been gentle and dependent on him was dead. What remained was a cheetah poised to strike back with a blade. And that blade had already plunged in for the first strike. Deep into the night, the lights in the cell block went out, and everyone was enveloped in a heavy silence. Only Bonnie lay awake, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. She knew that from this day forward, she was no longer a prisoner awaiting her fate's judgment. She would take the initiative to reclaim everything she had lost from Carter and Demi. But she also knew that the prison's information blockade was as impenetrable as a fortress. Her only opening was the name on that sticky note, Blake. He had been a finance director at Carter Corporation, and 3 years ago, it was only because Bonnie had warned him that he had escaped being cleaned out by the company. He was her pawn stationed outside the cell wall, and the one she trusted most. But she wasn't sure if he was still willing to act. Outside the cell, night patrol guards passed by. Tucked beneath her covers, Bonnie slipped the note into the handle of her toothbrush before closing her eyes. Tomorrow, she had to find a way to get the message out. The next morning after breakfast, Bonnie was summoned for her routine prenatal checkup. Her hand tightened around the modified toothbrush as her heart raced between control and a life-or-death gamble. Inside the medical room, the doctor was busy preparing instruments while Bonnie was led into the inner chamber. The moment the nurse looked away, she swiftly shoved the toothbrush into the medical waste bin beside the desk while simultaneously tossing a packet of orange candies, previously hidden in her sleeve, discreetly beside the outer trash bag. The candies served as her bargaining chip. Half an hour later, the janitor appeared, a taciturn old man who'd worked at the prison for over a decade without exchanging more than a few words with anyone. But Bonnie knew he was connected to Blake. She was betting this time would pay off. At the same moment, inside an office building outside the prison, Demi held a magazine in her hand, a smile playing on her lips, appearing relaxed. Her assistant nervously said, "Carter just called. He said Bonnie has a recording that might be detrimental to you. He wants you to be careful." Demi, however, curved her lips into a smile. "He still cares about me. Knowing I hate hassle, he gave me a heads up. Should we have someone deal with her?" She closed the magazine gently, her gaze turning cold. No need to deal with her. She was now a dead woman, a condemned prisoner whose life was borrowed. The real target was the Blake she'd been in contact with. Rising calmly, she pulled out her phone, dialed a number, and said coldly, "Take care of Blake. Clean up whatever needs cleaning up." Blake stood at the entrance of an internet cafe in a city corner. He had just received the note. C13. "Contact me." His eyes widened as he instantly realized Bonnie was on the move. Just as he was about to post the signal on the underground network, a black minivan pulled up slowly behind him. The window rolled down gradually. A hand clad in black leather gloves emerged, gripping a silenced pistol. "Mr. Zoe, someone's asking you to take a trip." At night, Bonnie sat on the edge of her bed, watching silently as the sky darkened. She didn't know if the note had been delivered, nor whether Blake was still willing to help her. The only thing she knew was that this gamble had only just begun. She gambled on trust, Demi gambled on ruthlessness. The two women quietly launched their second round of battle on an invisible battlefield. And from that moment on, her fate within the walls and Blake's fate outside became inextricably bound. Late at night, inside the cell, Bonnie stared at the ceiling, not having slept a wink all night. She kept waiting. Waiting for a reply to that note, waiting for Blake's response, waiting for a crack in fate to open. But 3 days passed, and nothing came. Something's happened, she finally realized. It wasn't that the note hadn't been delivered, it was that the only pawn she trusted outside the walls had been taken. Prison visiting room. Demi wore a white trench coat, looking clean, fresh, and pitifully vulnerable, forming a stark contrast to Bonnie across from her in her prison uniform. "Bonnie, I heard you're pregnant, and I'm truly heartbroken." Her eyes welled up, her voice choked with emotion. "You loved Carter so deeply, and he once said you were the perfect match." Bonnie didn't speak, only smiled softly. Her laughter was bitter, as if she'd seen through it all. "Demi, you know why you'll never portray genuine emotion? Because when you act, your eyes never see anyone else, only yourself." Demi's expression froze, then a layer of frost settled in her eyes. "Given your current situation, you're in no position to say that." "I'm pregnant. At least this life is safe for now." Bonnie moved closer slowly. "You're just afraid I'll overturn the case, afraid I'll expose all the dirty business between you and Carter, aren't you?" Demi gritted her teeth. "What the hell are you talking about? The recording, you already know about it. That note, you handled it pretty neatly too." Bonnie stood up, her tone suddenly icy. "But did you really think I didn't have a backup plan?" Demi's expression tightened. She knew Bonnie was smart and ruthless, but she'd always assumed Bonnie was merely stalling out of spite. But what she saw now was a woman lurking like a beast, poised to snap her throat at any moment. "What the hell do you want?" Bonnie's gaze was like a knife's edge. "I'm getting out of here." Demi sneered. "Are you dreaming?" "It's not a dream, it's an arrangement." She sprang to her feet, her gaze fixed on Demi. "You'd better have your affairs in order before I come out." That night, an emergency erupted in the cell block. Bonnie suffered sudden, severe bleeding and was rushed to the infirmary. The doctor diagnosed an abnormal uterine cavity with the fetus in critical condition, requiring immediate intervention. But just as everyone thought she was in critical condition, a nurse quietly wheeled her into the operating room. "Bonnie, the plan has changed." It was that old janitor. After taking off his outer coat, he revealed a sharp outfit and a stern expression. "Blake's been captured. We're activating Plan B. Now, you have two choices, either disappear now, or face certain death tomorrow." Bonnie's face was pale, yet her eyes held a piercing clarity. "Proceed." Hours later. The prison issued an announcement. Bonnie had suffered a sudden hemorrhage during a miscarriage and died despite emergency treatment. All documentation, medical records, autopsy reports, cremation certificates, was complete. Demi was trying on wedding dresses when she got the message. "She's finally dead?" She chuckled softly, her voice like a blade slicing through glass. "Too bad I didn't get to send her off myself." She thought the game was finally over. But she didn't know that Bonnie wasn't dead. She had long since shed her prison uniform for civilian clothes and slipped into the underground passageway. Her eyes held the sharpest, coldest glint. She knew the real counterattack had only just begun. The city's nightscape hung like a heavy curtain, shrouding the darkness within people's hearts. Bonnie stood among the crowd in an ordinary trench coat, sunglasses, and a mask, just another face in the crowd. Yet she knew she was now a dead person. The prison had notified the court, her family, and the media of her death, and all records pertaining to her had been terminated. From a death row inmate, she had transformed into a vengeful spirit utterly invisible to the world. And the first thing she intended to do was return to the place where she should never have reappeared, the Carter family mansion. Meanwhile, the villa was brightly lit. In the living room, Demi wore a light blue house dress, a glass of red wine in hand, nestled in Carter's embrace with a radiant smile. "Carter, is it really over?" she asked softly. Carter held her, his voice gentle. "Don't worry, Bonnie's been cremated. I signed off on the ashes myself. She won't be coming back this lifetime." "She was actually quite clever," Demi said, blinking her eyes with a hint of sarcasm. "Too bad she used her intelligence in the wrong place, thinking carrying a child would save her life." "And what happened?" She chuckled softly, raising her glass. "To the obstacles we've overcome together." The two exchanged smiles, unaware that outside the window, a figure stood in the darkness, silently watching their happy faces. Bonnie's hand slowly tightened. Her knuckles turned white. She raised her phone and silently captured the scene. "You're laughing so happily," she murmured under her breath, "then I'll just watch and see if you can still laugh when I expose your scandals." The next day, an anonymous account quietly appeared online, releasing a blurry video. In the footage, Carter and Demi discussed Bonnie's death was well-deserved, evidence having been burned, and money having been transferred. Though the video quality was poor, it immediately drew massive attention. Suddenly, the Carter corruption and money laundering case, the Bonnie death row wrongful conviction, and other related topics surged to the top of the trending searches. Carter slammed the phone down in anger. "Investigate. Find out who filmed this immediately." But Demi sensed something was off. She couldn't shake the feeling that the perspective and camera angles in that video were all too familiar. She looked exactly like someone she thought was dead and gone. Carter gripped his hand nervously. What if, just what if, Bonnie isn't dead? Carter replied coldly, impossible. The cremation report, DNA verification, prison records, all authentic. She couldn't come back even if she grew wings. But what if she'd already fabricated the DNA? What if that corpse wasn't even hers? Demi's voice grew increasingly shaky. She knew Bonnie best. That woman was a master of restraint and calculation. Once cornered, she'd strike back with even greater ferocity. Meanwhile, Bonnie sat in a dimly lit rental apartment, her computer screen littered with red dots. Each dot represented a channel for laundering Carter's funds, and every line traced Demi's covert network of connections. She strung them together one by one, the price she paid for her own chance to escape death. Now it was time to close the net. Demi, she murmured, her gaze icy, everything you took, I'll get back, every last bit, with interest. The curtain has officially risen on the second phase of this war. From behind prison bars to the fog of society. From open conflict to covert struggle. The dead have returned, yet the enemy remains oblivious. Bonnie's revenge has only just begun. At 3 a.m, the city lay asleep. Yet Bonnie's eyes never closed. Seated before her makeshift computer, her fingers danced across the keyboard. The screen flickered with rows of financial transaction data and encrypted jump chains, red and green intertwined, pulsing like the beat of a war drum. This is Carter's secret account system. To be precise, it's the financial data labyrinth she once designed for him herself. Isn't that ironic? The fortress she built with her own hands has now become the weapon of her revenge. Bonnie clicked open a hidden folder, and a contract immediately popped up on the screen, a Singapore Onhai Group Fund authorization document. Account holder, Demi. She stared at the account holder, a cold smile flickering in her eyes. You think hiding dirty money overseas will keep me from finding you? No, Demi, I'm far more ruthless than you imagine. On the other side, Demi was sitting comfortably at a high-end spa, enjoying a facial treatment. A tablet lay before her, displaying her popularity metrics across various platforms. She had grown utterly comfortable in this role. Yet the fine lines at the corners of her eyes still left her feeling a bit anxious. She instructed the attendant, add some ice crystal infusion. I want to dazzle everyone at tonight's Finance Business Figures Gala. Certainly, Miss Sue. It's Mrs. Demi, she corrected unhappily. As the evening banquet descended into twilight, Demi made her entrance in a haute couture gown, instantly becoming the center of attention. Spotlights followed her every step, and media cameras trained on her. Just as she raised her champagne glass, before she could exchange greetings, a reporter's sharp voice pierced the venue's elegance. Miss Sue, there are allegations that you are involved in overseas money laundering. Is this true? The air froze. Demi's smile froze on her face, then instantly regained its composure. I don't know what you're talking about. I've never been involved in any illegal transactions. The reporter gave a cold laugh and raised a tablet. The screen displayed the Onhai Group account document, the account name clearly reading Demi. Beneath the photo were multiple transfer records totaling $200 million. The room erupted in shock. Carter's face turned pale as he tried to step forward to regain control, but was immediately swamped by the press. Demi's voice trembled. No, it's fake. It's a forgery. Who? Who is framing me? A voice suddenly rang out from the audience. Aren't you the best at framing others? Why are you panicking now that someone's got you in their sights? Demi whipped her head around. No one was there. But that voice. It was all too familiar. As if it had drifted up from a pile of corpses. Bonnie's voice. She clutched the champagne glass so tightly her knuckles turned white, a preposterous thought suddenly flashing through her mind. Bonnie isn't dead. At the same moment, Bonnie sat in a distant cafe, watching the live stream of the dinner party through one-way glass. She took a sip of lukewarm water, her expression as calm as ever. The first domino has fallen. Next, it's your turn, Carter. She ended the live stream, clicked on an encrypted file, and sent it to the National Financial Investigation Unit's anonymous email. Email subject, Analysis of Carter Group Account Anomalies, involving funds totaling approximately $3.2 billion. Late at night. Demi shattered bottle after bottle of perfume on her vanity in a fit of rage. Glass shards littered the floor, but she didn't even feel the pain as her high heels crushed them beneath her feet. She's still alive. I know she's still alive. Carter's face darkened, but he said nothing. He just slammed a stack of documents down in front of her. It was an internal notice. The China Banking Regulatory Commission had launched an investigation into the freezing of Carter's group accounts. Multiple transfers under Demi's personal name were flagged as high-risk money laundering activities. The money laundering channels they had painstakingly set up over 2 years were shattered beyond repair in a single night. Did we underestimate her? Demi's voice trembled. Carter gritted his teeth. No. She's dead. Someone must be avenging her. He'd never admit it, Bonnie might still be alive. If she really isn't dead, then their hell has only just begun. Bonnie closed the laptop, picked up a black hard drive, and smiled. What you owe me, not a single one of you will escape. At 2 a.m, the room light still burned. Demi sat on the bed, her expression dazed, her face deathly pale. Her eyes were fixed unblinkingly on the darkness beyond the window, as if something terrifying lurked within that night. She's still alive. She must still be alive, she murmured, her voice faint as a breath. Only her eyes were filled with terror. Carter sat restlessly on the sofa, a cigarette clamped between his fingers, the tip glowing red-hot. He was already on his 5th smoke, yet the gnawing anxiety in his gut showed no sign of easing. Can you just get your head together? Awake? Demi whipped her head around, her eyes wild as she stared at him. Carter, you said she was dead. But that email, that evidence, only she would know those details. The account, the redirect path, the disguised interface, she never told anyone when she set it up. No one else understands it. She couldn't possibly be alive. Carter gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay calm. The hospital issued an official death certificate, and there's a cremation record too. She doesn't even have ashes. Did you actually see the body? Demi cut him off abruptly, her gaze sharp as a knife. You didn't, did you? You just had her body disposed of, but did you ever consider she might not be dead at all? Carter's expression finally shifted. Flashes of that night flooded his mind, the moment she was declared dead despite resuscitation efforts. He hadn't even entered the operating room before signing the hospital's report. Impossible. Then explain to me how she got access to our overseas account transaction records? Carter, we deleted the original paths ages ago. Unless she wrote the backdoor herself, there's no way she could have cracked it. Demi covered her head. She's right here, watching us like a ghost, slowly demanding our lives. Carter shot to his feet, yanked her shoulders, and growled coldly, enough. Even if she's alive, she's just a convicted criminal on death row. Now she's just a cornered animal. You're afraid of her? What can she do? She can. Demi stared at him, her gaze unusually clear and eerie. She's not afraid of death. She's carrying a child. She's willing to fight to the death. She's far more ruthless than either of us. Carter shoved her away violently and strode into the study, only to discover the safe had been tampered with. His expression darkened as he rushed back into the bedroom and grabbed Demi's wrist. Did you touch my files? I didn't. Demi shook her head, then suddenly her eyes narrowed. You mean someone broke into this villa? They locked eyes, and the same name surfaced in both their minds, Bonnie. That night, the surveillance outside the door happened to be disabled by a virus, occurring just hours before the financial accounts were exposed. Demi nearly broke down. She's back, she's right here among us. Carter's phone suddenly rang, displaying a call from the internal finance director. He answered to hear a panicked voice on the other end. Carter, it's bad. The financial internal control system has been hacked. All senior management accounts from the past 3 months have been backed up and transmitted to an external IP address. We can't get them back. What did you say? Carter's face drained of color. And one of those funding chains involves your bet contract with Highway Group. If that leaks, it's insider trading. Carter's legs buckled, nearly toppling him. External IP? It's her. Not only was Bonnie still alive, she had already begun dismantling their entire business empire. At that very moment, Bonnie sat in an old city cafe, gazing at the mottled clock on the wall, a faint smile playing on her lips. She dialed an encrypted number. Plan A executed successfully. Proceed to Plan B. The voice came through the phone, confirmed target on the brink of collapse. Should we initiate media explosion? Not yet, Bonnie gazed at the morning light streaming through the window. I want them to crumble slowly, in uncertainty and fear. At the same moment, the news headlines quietly changed their front pages. The group's capital chain shows signs of distress. Chairman Carter may be implicated in economic crimes. An anonymous whistleblower letter surfaces. Who is the mastermind behind it all? Bonnie isn't dead? A former death row inmate may be the biggest informant. The storm has only just begun. At 6 in the morning, the topic Demi's persona collapses quietly climbed to the top of the trending charts. Initially, there were only a handful of reposts and comments, but as an anonymous video spread, traffic surged like a flood breaking through a dam, sweeping across the entire internet. In the video, Demi is seen secretly visiting Carter in the hospital's VIP corridor. Dressed in a white gown, she wears a gentle, charming smile as she dutifully links arms with Carter, looking every bit the elegant young wife of a wealthy family. Below the video, however, someone posted a corner of the court judgment. Bonnie, Carter's legal wife, instantly set off a firestorm in the comments section. Wait, wasn't Bonnie supposed to be Carter's business partner? When did she become his wife? Have you guys noticed that Demi seems like the other woman? Can someone tell me if Bonnie was actually framed? Latest scoop, Bonnie filed a formal complaint against Carter and Demi for money laundering, with video evidence already uploaded to the forum. Just when everyone thought it was merely some random person's wild imagination, a screenshot ignited the powder keg of public opinion. In the video footage from Bonnie's trial, a confidential fund transfer chart cited by the prosecution was unexpectedly found with remote access logs on Demi's computer. Even more shocking is the whistleblower's signature, Bonnie. She's still alive. Under this trending comment, with 100,000 shares and 200,000 replies, countless people began questioning the truth behind this high-profile money laundering case. Inside the villa, Demi's expression had completely shattered. She slammed her phone onto the floor. Why does she still have evidence? Didn't you say all the hard drives were wiped? That all the transfers went through my account? She roared at Carter, why did you put Bonnie's name in that trust document? Because back then, I hadn't decided to give up on her yet. Carter growled, his expression darkening to the extreme. You think I wanted to put all my chips on you? When she was pregnant, I did waver. Demi shuddered, her face turning pale in an instant. What did you say? You considered keeping her when she was pregnant? Carter didn't answer. But Demi already understood. She hated Bonnie's very existence, and she hated Carter's indecision. You never truly intended to have just me. She laughed maniacally. Now look, she's carrying a child, returned alive from hell, while I've been left with no way out. She staggered into the dressing room, staring blankly at her reflection in the mirror. Tell me, Carter, she said, if I jumped off this building now, would it finally earn me some sympathy? Demi, don't be crazy. Carter snapped. The priority now is damage control. You need to hold a press conference, stabilize your public image, and shift all blame back onto Bonnie. How do we cover this up? Demi stared at him, her eyes flashing with an unfamiliar ferocity. She's got the evidence, the IP addresses, every single record of my transfers. How do we whitewash this? Carter gritted his teeth, lost in thought. But the next second, Assistant Gao burst into the room. Carter, it's bad news. The Lin Group just released a statement. Bonnie is the Lin family's biological daughter, lost for over 20 years. Boom. The news struck Carter and Demi like a bolt from the blue. What? Demi's face strained completely. The statement said that Madame Lin herself had undergone DNA testing, and preparations were underway to publicly announce the recognition of kinship. Carter stiffened. This was the Lin Group, one of the nation's largest private enterprises. If Bonnie used this to reverse her status and then leveraged the incriminating evidence she held, both he and Demi would be buried alive. The Lin Group recently received an anonymous package suspected to contain clues about the long-lost biological daughter of the Lin family. The board of directors is currently conducting a discreet investigation. The Lin Group's official website quietly updated this information. Though merely an internal notice, it was captured in screenshots by observant individuals and shared online, sparking widespread discussion. Is the Lin family's real heiress coming back? Could it be Bonnie? That can't be, wasn't she already sentenced? But if it really is her, what about Demi? Demi watched it all unfold, her nails digging into her flesh. She's actually the Lin family heiress? How could that be? Carter frowned deeply, pulling the contract from the table. Demi, the most critical issue now is controlling stake. Word from the Lin board suggests the matriarch plans to transfer part of her shares to Bonnie. What does that mean? It means she'll soon have enough capital to turn the tables on us. Carter's eyes turned icy. If she teams up with the Lins to sue us for property misappropriation and joint fraud, the prosecutors will definitely reopen the investigation. Demi sprang to her feet. We can't let her return to the Lin family. We must stop her. Carter glanced up at her, his tone laden with implication. Aren't you the best at playing stand-in? Demi stiffened, her gaze turning sharp and fierce. You mean I go to the Lin family, to take her place? You've had plastic surgery, and your bone structure is 7/10 similar. All we need is to stage a mistaken identity, to seize the Lin family shares, then secure the capital withdrawal and escape. Carter whispered. Demi laughed, her laughter as cold as frost. Fine. Since Bonnie wants to return, I'll play her first. Let's see if the Lin family recognizes her. Meanwhile, in the underground apartment, Bonnie stood at the window in a gray maternity dress, gazing at the city lights shimmering in the night. Damon placed a document before her. The anonymous materials you sent out have already caught the attention of the Lin family's board of directors. Our next step is to secure the evidence and complete the reinvestigation filing. Bonnie's gaze remained cool. I won't return to the Lin family so soon. The time isn't right yet. Smart. Damon nodded. Once you make your public appearance, Demi and Carter will definitely lash out desperately. Bonnie touched her belly, her voice soft yet firm. I'm waiting for an absolutely safe opportunity, for myself, and for the child inside me. She turned to look at Damon, her eyes burning with unprecedented resolve. I won't give them another chance to strike back. This time, I'll make sure everyone knows who the true daughter of the Lin family is. Late at night, Demi received an anonymous call. You think you've won? The woman's voice on the other end was hoarse, as if crawling out of hell. The real Mrs. Bonnie hasn't spoken yet. Demi sprang to her feet, the wine glass in her hand shattering with a sharp crack. Blood trickled through her fingers. Bonnie, you're alive? A cold, faint laugh came from the other end of the line. From this moment on, you'll pay the price. Mom, I brought your medicine. Demi glided into the Lin family's ancestral home wearing a soft pink knit dress, her voice gentle and respectful, the very picture of a devoted and dutiful daughter. Lady Lin lay on her sickbed, her complexion slightly pale yet her eyes clear and alert. She took the medicine bowl, her gaze lingering on Demi's face for 2 seconds. Thank you, Bonnie. Demi's expression stiffened. The idea of being a stand-in, especially impersonating her arch-rival Bonnie, stirred a flicker of unease within her. Lately, Lady Lin had grown increasingly polite toward her, no longer as affectionate as she had been at first. She sensed the chill but dared not show it, continuing in a gentle tone, Mom, I recently looked through the old Lin family photo albums and saw pictures of us together when I was little. I really miss those days. Lady Lin lowered her head to take her medicine, offering no reply. Just then, a servant brought in some pastries but accidentally knocked over a rosewood jewelry box, sending a silver chain tumbling out. Demi caught sight of it out of the corner of her eye, and her face instantly drained of color. She recognized that silver chain, she'd even ripped it off Bonnie's neck herself and tossed it into the trash. Yet now, it appeared perfectly intact beside old Madame Lin. Mother, this necklace? Old Madame Lin lifted her head, her gaze suddenly sharpening. Have you seen it? Demi was momentarily speechless. Of course, this is my... Lady Lin's lips curved into a smile, yet her expression held deeper meaning. Indeed. After you left home, this chain was the only thing that went with you. She stroked the silver chain, her voice gentle. Xiao Xian wore this constantly as a child. She still had it on the day before she went missing, but it vanished afterward. Recently, I received an anonymous package containing this very chain, along with a lock of her hair. Demi stiffened, her nails digging deep into her palms. Mom, it was me. I accidentally lost this necklace. Someone must have picked it up. Madame Lin didn't answer, only gave a soft smile. Some people, after playing a role for too long, forget who they truly are. Don't you think? She said, looking at Demi. The air froze instantly. Cold sweat beaded on Demi's forehead as she fought back panic, forcing a smile. Mom, I'm not sure what you mean. Mrs. Lin smiled faintly and closed her eyes. It's nothing. You can leave now. I'm tired. She's starting to suspect me. Demi returned to the car, her face as pale as paper, and said to Carter in a hurried tone, if I stay any longer, I'll definitely give myself away. Carter lit a cigarette, his gaze cold. Don't lose your footing. The only thing you can do now is maintain your current identity. Wait until the board formally announces you as the heir and you secure the shares, only then will everything be stable. But what if Bonnie really comes back? Carter abruptly stubbed out his cigarette, his gaze as cold as a blade. If she dares come back, don't blame me for disregarding the child's life. Demi's heart skipped a beat as she lowered her head in silence. Meanwhile, Bonnie sat under the dim light, quietly studying the Lin family's genetic database. Damon handed over a test report. I sent your necklace back to the Lins, using them as a tool. What's your next move? Bonnie's lips curved into a smile. If she's playing along, I'll play along until the very end. But for someone who's dead to suddenly show up would be too conspicuous. She tucked away the test report, her gaze icy. We'll let the Lin family uncover my true identity themselves. When that happens, they'll come begging me to return. The game of the real heiress has only just begun. The Bonnie case will be reopened for investigation. When this news quietly appeared on an inner page of the court's official website, scarcely anyone in the legal community took notice. Yet for Carter and Demi, it felt like a resounding slap in the face. Who gave her the right to appeal? Which lawyer? Which lawyer? Carter slammed his fist down on the desk, shattering the ashtray. Veins bulged on his forehead. He never imagined that the woman he'd already sent to the gallows would turn around and bite him back. I've arranged everything flawlessly. All the evidence points to her. How could she possibly have a chance to overturn the verdict? He growled through clenched teeth, his eyes dark and menacing like a venomous snake. At that very moment, on the other end, in a dimly lit basement, a new set of data images projected onto the wall in front of Bonnie. Damon pressed the remote control and smiled faintly. This is Ivan, a top-tier criminal defense attorney. He's secured acquittals for 3 death row inmates. The legal community calls him a prodigy who pulls the living from the dead. I'll be working with him to overturn your conviction. As he spoke, a young man dressed in a tailored suit and standing tall stepped into the spotlight. With handsome features and a composed demeanor, he held a thick stack of documents in his hands. Miss Bonnie, Ivan nodded slightly. I've uncovered crucial evidence. The illegal funds transferred into your account were not initiated by you personally, but by a cross-border company established in your name by Carter. We've obtained the IP addresses and data, along with a professional analysis report, which can serve as evidence of your innocence. Bonnie took a deep breath, her fingertips trembling slightly. She wasn't unfamiliar with waiting for hope, but this time, she finally saw the crack in the door of hope begin to open. Ivan continued, furthermore, I retrieved a recent record of Demi's anonymous property purchase. The buyer was listed as her mother, and the property previously belonged to a shell company on the money laundering list. This asset is likely the reward Carter gave her. Bonnie sneered coldly, so they'd already divided the spoils long ago. Ivan handed her the documents. Are you willing to testify in court? Even if it's just via remote video, it would have a greater impact on the jury. Bonnie didn't answer immediately. Instead, she raised her hand and gently stroked her slightly rounded belly. I promise you, but not now. Bonnie lifted her gaze, her expression composed. I know exactly what kind of people Carter and Demi are. If I show myself now, they'll fabricate evidence again, or even kill me. I'll wait until this battle is fought more brilliantly. Her voice was soft and measured, yet it carried a sharp, confrontational edge. I refuse to live in shame. I will rise up. I will stand before the judgment seat and tear off their hypocritical masks with my own hands. At the same time, Carter contacted a black market tech guy who'd taken care of trouble for him before. I want you to look into a guy named Ivan. Find every social connection he has, his court records, and whether he's got anyone backing him. I don't care how you do it, just make sure he shuts up for good. Meanwhile, in the Lin family conference room, the board convened an emergency meeting. The silver chain and hair sample received by the matriarch had been sent for analysis. Our people say the DNA shows a preliminary match with the Lin family genetic lineage. With 99.99% certainty, the matriarch's daughter is still alive. At 2 a.m, in New York's most exclusive private club. Under the dim, yellow light, Carter sat with a grim expression on the black leather sofa, a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses standing beside him. He was famously known as the cleanup crew within the White Egret underground intelligence network. For anyone seeking to bury their secrets, as long as the price was right, he could dispose of them without a trace. Ivan, Carter gritted out, this man can't stay. He knows too much. White Egret, a cigar between his fingers, exhaled smoke leisurely. Are you sure you want to take him out? He's an A-level lawyer on the Bar Association's priority protection list. If anything happens, the media will dig deep. I don't care, Carter said, his eyes flashing with malice. As long as I ruin his reputation, even if it means framing him, fabricating charges, or smearing his name, I'll make sure he never represents Bonnie in court again. Just stall her for 6 months, and my position on the board will be solidified. By then, no one will be able to touch me. The White Egret snorted derisively. Interesting. A rich, bold madman, that. He flicked cigarette ash. Then I'll do as you say. But I'll need someone to play along, to make this scandal look convincing. Carter lifted his gaze, his expression cold. Demi. What? Demi paled in shock. You want me to seduce Ivan? Are you out of your mind? Out of your mind? Carter seized her wrist with such force it nearly crushed her bones. If you want to keep your title as the princess of the Lin Group, you'd better do as I say. Don't forget what you traded for this identity. Demi's eyes flashed, her chest heaving violently. She gritted her teeth, her voice trembling as she asked, but what if I fail? Then you'll vanish completely. Carter coldly pushed her away. I've run out of patience. 3 days later. Ivan had just stepped out of the law firm when he received a call from an unknown number. Attorney G, I'm an old friend of Bonnie's. I have some crucial evidence I'd like to hand over to you privately, but I don't want to alarm her. Could we meet? It was a woman's voice, gentle yet earnest. Ivan hesitated for a moment before agreeing. They arranged to meet at a semi-enclosed cafe. As soon as Ivan sat down, he saw that familiar yet unfamiliar face, Demi. She wore a simple beige trench coat, her hair hanging loosely, her eyes looking pitifully vulnerable. Attorney G, thank you for agreeing to see me. Ivan remained expressionless, his tone neutral. You sought me out. What is it? Ivan took the documents but didn't glance at them, merely staring intently at her. You're with Carter, right? Demi's expression hardened. Your timing is too convenient, your manner too urgent. Someone genuinely trying to help Bonnie wouldn't choose this place to meet me privately. Ivan said coolly, are you here to lure me in, or to set a trap? Demi's fingers trembled slightly, and she nearly lost control of her expression. She hadn't expected this man to be so alert and impenetrable. Meanwhile, Bonnie had watched the entire meeting unfold via remote monitoring. Damon turned off the screen and murmured, she's panicking. That means Carter's already unstable. Bonnie's gaze was cold and steely. The more anxious Demi gets, the more she fears my return. Excellent. I'll make sure she fears me completely. She rose and stood at the window, her eyes fixed on the city's nightscape, her gaze sharp as a blade. Once everything is prepared, I'll make the Lin Corporation board members come begging me to return. The Lin family mansion, a letter sent anonymously from abroad shattered the tranquil surface of the lake. The matriarch's daughter was actually wrongfully imprisoned abroad. The current one is an imposter named Demi, not the long-lost daughter of the elderly Mrs. Lin. After reading the letter, Mrs. Lin froze in place. She had been observing this Bonnie in her home these past days, always sensing a faint, elusive sense of dissonance. Yet she had persistently convinced herself, it was merely the result of mother and daughter being separated for too long, not yet close enough. Mrs. Lin clenched the letter tightly, hesitation flickering in her eyes. Investigate. After reading the letter, Mrs. Lin froze in place. She had been observing this Bonnie in her home these past days, always sensing a faint, almost imperceptible sense of dissonance. Yet she had persistently convinced herself, it was merely the result of mother and daughter being separated for too long, not yet close enough. Mrs. Lin clenched the letter tightly, hesitation flickering in her eyes. Investigate. Mr. Lin nodded and immediately instructed the family investigators to launch a covert inquiry, prioritizing verification of Demi's DNA, upbringing, and past connections. Meanwhile, Bonnie learned of this through a long-serving employee hidden within the Lin family's holdings. A cold smile touched her lips. Finally starting to suspect. Damon sat across from her, watching the woman grow increasingly composed and sharp, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. What do you want to do? Give them a show. Bonnie lifted her gaze, her eyes piercing. Let the family see for themselves that she's a fake. 3 days later, the Lin family convened an emergency meeting of all board members in the family conference hall. Demi received a call from her mother early that morning, you must attend tonight. We have an important announcement to make. A vague sense of unease gnawed at her, yet she had no choice but to agree. She knew that her life of privilege and ease at home depended entirely on her status as the biological daughter of the Lin Group. If that were ever exposed, she would be nothing. At 7 o'clock in the evening, the Lin family conference room was brightly lit. Demi made an elegant entrance wearing a carefully chosen navy blue gown. Facing Mrs. Lin's scrutinizing gaze, she called out with feigned composure, Mom. Mrs. Lin offered no reply, merely gesturing for her to sit down. We invited you here today because someone reported that your identity is fraudulent, Mr. Lin stated bluntly, his voice steady. We would like you to undergo an immediate DNA comparison test. Demi's expression changed abruptly. Mom, Dad, you suspect me? Not suspect, confirm, Mrs. Lynn said, enunciating each word. Just then, the conference hall's large screen suddenly lit up, and a pre-recorded video began playing slowly. In the footage, an elderly nanny is being interviewed. Demi isn't the Lynn family's biological daughter. She grew up in the old district of South City, just an ordinary child from a regular family. She was merely Carter's mistress. As for Bonnie, she's the real one. The moment the video played, the conference hall fell deathly silent. Demi leapt to her feet. This is a setup. Someone is deliberately smearing my reputation. Yet her voice could no longer mask the wavering and doubt visible in most directors' eyes. What a coincidence, whispered one director. Isn't that the old nanny in the video who looked after Bonnie at the Lynn residence 10 years ago? Yes, she even remembered the little mole on my third young mistress's foot when she was a child. The moment the screen went dark, a figure suddenly entered the conference room doorway. Dressed in simple black, with long hair pulled high, her face was stern and her presence commanding. Bonnie. She walked in slowly, took her seat under the gaze of all present, and smiled. Fellow directors, it's been a long time. I am Bonnie, your biological daughter who disappeared 20 years ago. Demi's pupils dilated in shock, her legs buckling as she nearly stumbled. Mrs. Lynn sprang to her feet, covering her mouth as she stared at her in disbelief. You're... Bonnie looked at her and offered a faint smile. Mom, I'm back. You're lying. How could you still be alive? Demi's voice trembled as she pointed at Bonnie, her face as pale as paper, as if she'd seen a ghost. Bonnie merely smiled softly, her gaze fixed on her. Demi, you put me in prison, took the fall for me, stole my identity. Now that I've come back myself, I want to ask you one thing, are you scared? Demi screamed at the top of her lungs, she's a fake. She's been dead for years. I'm your real daughter. Mrs. Lynn's hand trembled, nearly losing her grip on the chair. She staggered back 2 steps and collapsed into it, her face drained of color. Mr. Lynn's face turned ashen, and he roared, enough. Get a DNA test. No one gave Demi another chance to make excuses. The Lynn family had already privately arranged for DNA testing. In just one day, the truth would be revealed. Seeing the tide turning against her, Demi suddenly took a deep breath, a flash of ruthlessness appearing in her eyes. She lowered her voice, are you sure, you really want to hear the truth? Mrs. Lynn looked up and murmured, what truth? Demi clenched her jaw, advancing step by step. She abruptly flung her bag onto the table, pulled out a report, and slammed it open. This prenatal exam report is from yesterday. Yes, I'm pregnant. And the father is Carter. If you'll just acknowledge me as your daughter, our 2 conglomerates can join forces in a powerful alliance. The entire room erupted in shock. Mrs. Lynn's face paled instantly as she pointed at her, her voice trembling. You're carrying Carter's child? Demi's eyes welled with tears. You want to abandon me? I don't mind. But this child, he could be your grandson. He could be the bond between our 2 families. Mr. Lynn slammed the table angrily, shut up. Mrs. Lynn's eyes darted around, her face twitching, yet she ultimately couldn't bring herself to utter harsh words. At that moment, however, Bonnie's brow slowly furrowed. Demi, she won't back down an inch. In this game, she's even using the child as a bargaining chip. Even if it means ruin and disgrace, she'll exploit Mrs. Lynn's soft spot to turn the tables. If you dare to do it, you must dare to own up to it. Bonnie said coldly, do you think pregnancy can wash away your sins? Carter is my husband in name. Now you claim to be pregnant, doesn't that make you nothing but a homewrecker? You really think you're some kind of princess? Demi gritted her teeth, he fell in love with me first. We truly loved each other. You stole my identity, and now you want to steal my marriage and my life? Bonnie's voice was icy. Demi, you shouldn't even be allowed to live under the sun. Mr. Lynn finally made his decision. We'll address the DNA matter once the results come in tomorrow. In the meantime, Demi will suspend all her affairs. Bonnie, you'll stay at the old house. We'll personally arrange security personnel to protect you. This statement effectively marked the official acknowledgement of Bonnie's return. Demi trembled with rage, yet forced herself to step aside, her hand pressed tightly against her lower abdomen. Meanwhile, Bonnie stood bathed in the spotlight, her gaze as cold and sharp as a blade. She thought to herself, Demi, do you really believe such petty tricks will save what little ground you have left? This time, I won't let you turn the tables so easily. The atmosphere in the living room of the Lynn family's ancestral home was so oppressive it felt almost suffocating. A low rumble of engines sounded outside the door. A servant hurried in to announce, Mr. Carter has arrived. Mrs. Lynn froze, then turned to Mr. Lynn. What brings him here at this hour? Bonnie merely smiled indifferently. It would be strange if he didn't come. Demi has already made him her last lifeline, how could he possibly not step in? The door swung open as Carter stepped inside, clad in a bespoke black suit. He retained that same composed, dignified demeanor, his eyes as dark and unfathomable as Bonnie remembered. Yet he was no longer the man she had trusted by her side, now he was a wolf in sheep's clothing. Mom and Dad, I heard the Lynn family had some trouble, so I rushed over to check on you. Carter smiled calmly, his tone suggesting he was still the son-in-law. Mr. Lynn's expression turned cold. Well, you're quite the timely visitor. Demi hurried over, her voice urgent. Carter, they suspect my identity. They say I'm an imposter and want to kick me out of the Lynn family. Please speak up for me. Carter looked at her reddened eyes, his expression softening slightly. But the next second, his gaze fell on Bonnie, and his pupils suddenly contracted. She stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, silhouetted against the light, her aura sharp and distant. She resembled the wife deep in his memory, always meek and submissive, gentle and docile, yet she was utterly different. She was alive. Not merely alive, but stronger and more uncontrollable than ever before. Bonnie. Carter's voice dropped a notch, tinged with caution. You're still alive? Sorry to disappoint you. Bonnie's tone was icy. Not only am I alive, but I'm going to make you pay every single cent you owe me. Carter's Adam's apple bobbed slightly as a flicker of wariness crossed his mind. He knew that Bonnie's appearance meant Demi's identity would be exposed sooner or later. There must be some misunderstanding here. Carter adopted his usual gentle tone. When you disappeared right before the crime, we all thought you. You thought I was dead? Bonnie sneered. So you conveniently pinned all the blame on me, making it easier for you and your white moonlight to continue your dirty dealings and marriage? The words caused Carter's expression to shift slightly. Lynn's father snorted coldly. Don't you think you owe us an explanation? About this case, your relationship with Demi, and Bonnie's disappearance all those years ago. Demi's expression darkened as she grabbed Carter's hand. Carter, we promised not to waver. You swore to me we'd get through this together. Bonnie watched them, her voice suddenly sharp. You did get through it, by sacrificing my flesh and blood to forge your innocence and glory. She pulled out her phone, placed it on the table with a thud, and played an audio clip. Carter, Miss Bonnie's death sentence is about to be finalized. You and Miss Sue can proceed with the wedding arrangements without worry. Well done. Poor Miss Bonnie, she never even touched the money laundering, yet she took the fall for so much of it. Who else would step up? Is she even useful to me anymore? The audio played, leaving everyone speechless. Mrs. Lynn sprang to her feet, her face deathly pale. Carter, is this really what you said? Carter's expression turned ashen. This is fake. Someone's framing me. It's a voice synthesis. Whether it's fabricated or not, the court will decide. Bonnie spoke coldly. Have you forgotten I'm carrying your child? If you dare lay a finger on me, this child will be irrefutable proof of your crimes. The words struck like thunder. Demi stared at her in shock, her face drained of color. Impossible. Bonnie met her gaze, her eyes like knives. The moment you decided to silence me forever with the death penalty, I resolved to drag each and every one of you down to hell with this child. Bonnie, you're lying. Demi leapt up from the couch, her eyes bloodshot as she pointed at Bonnie's belly. How could you possibly be pregnant? That baby must be fake, you made it up to get sympathy. Bonnie gave a faint smile, reached into her bag, and pulled out the prenatal examination form, laying it gently on the table. The paper was pristine white, stamped with a clear red seal. In bold letters it stated, 8 weeks pregnant, vital signs normal. She read it aloud, word for word, issued by a top-tier tertiary hospital, stamped by the institution, signed by the attending physician. Want me to have it verified? Demi's face was deathly pale, yet her eyes darted wildly. Carter, she's using you, she screamed, lunging forward and grabbing his arm. She hasn't been your wife for ages. She's a criminal. She took the blame for your crime and was already sentenced to death. Now she's back to destroy us. He once believed his plans were meticulously crafted, flawless and impenetrable. But now he finally understands, the woman he personally sent to prison was never a helpless lamb. She crawled back from hell to claim his life. I'm your fiancé. Demi screamed hysterically, as if driven completely mad. That engagement ring was meant for me, and I planned the entire wedding. What is Bonnie? She's nothing but a scapegoat, a pawn to take the fall for us. This statement sent a jolt through Lynn's father. What? You mean she took the fall? Demi suddenly realized she'd let something slip and quickly covered her mouth, but it was too late. Mrs. Lynn finally snapped out of it, her face turning whiter than paper. So, you and Carter have been together all along? And Bonnie really was framed in this case? Demi began to tremble, stumbling back a few steps. I just loved him too much. I just didn't want to lose him. You don't want to lose him, so you're paving the way with my life? Bonnie's voice suddenly shot up an octave, her long-suppressed emotions erupting. Have you forgotten? I'd been married less than a year back then. You made me trust you, call you best friend. You were the one who kept slipping me drugs, making me sign papers, you were the one who shoved me into hell. Demi completely broke down, collapsing to her knees with a thud. I'm sorry, Bonnie. I truly just love him so much. I beg you, let me go. I have nothing left. You still have Carter. Bonnie sneered coldly. Don't worry, I won't let you two be separated. You'll rot in jail together and face trial together. You dare. Demi's eyes flashed, and she suddenly grabbed the glass on the table, hurling it viciously at Bonnie. Bonnie, watch out. Mrs. Lynn cried out. Bonnie reacted with lightning speed, darting to the side. The glass cup grazed her shoulder before smashing against the wall and shattering into pieces. The next second, two plainclothes officers concealed in the shadows rushed forward, pinning Demi firmly to the ground. Miss Bonnie warned us there might be unexpected incidents today, so we've already set up security measures in advance. Demi screamed, she's the criminal. I'm Carter's real wife. She's deceived all of you. That child she's carrying is fake, it's fake. Bonnie crouched down, her gaze steady and calm. Why are you so upset about my pregnancy? Demi's eyes widened, her voice trembling. You're trying to use the baby to get Carter back? You can forget it. He's not worth my effort. Bonnie slowly rose to her feet and turned to face Carter. Next, I'll make sure you see with your own eyes how the person you fought so hard to protect will gradually ruin your life. Carter finally spoke, his voice hoarse. Bonnie, what do you want? Bonnie slowly approached, her eyes cold. I want you to pay for your crimes with your blood. Carter never imagined he'd one day be cuffed with cold metal handcuffs. At the Lynn family villa, police presented an arrest warrant on the spot, charging him with multiple felonies including evidence tampering, money laundering, and conspiracy to frame others. Amidst the stunned silence, Bonnie calmly handed over a USB drive. These are the off-the-books account records you personally signed off on, hidden on your company's overseas servers. My legal team has already backed them up and initiated a lawful subpoena process. Her voice was measured and unhurried, yet it felt like a sharp blade piercing Carter's chest. You think I was just waiting to die in prison? Bonnie took a slow step back, her gaze sharp as a blade. I was waiting for an opportunity to make you suffer eternal damnation. Now, it's here. Lynn's father's face turned ashen as he slammed his palm on the table. Carter, you dare use my Lynn family's daughter as a scapegoat? Do you know she's your own daughter? Carter's expression abruptly changed, and he froze. That single sentence made everyone gasp. Mrs. Lynn gasped in shock. You mean, what? Mr. Lynn frowned deeply but offered no denial. His gaze settled heavily on Bonnie. I've investigated. She's the biological daughter my ex-wife and I lost over 20 years ago. Back then, she was called Emma. Demi had just been taken away, not yet loaded into the car, when she heard those words. Instantly, her eyes glazed over and her lips turned pale. No, impossible. You're talking nonsense. She's just an orphanage kid, how could she possibly be the Lynn family's heiress? Bonnie stood rooted to the spot, listening to Mr. Lynn's words, yet her heart remained unexpectedly calm. She had long suspected her origins were no ordinary matter, and now that it was confirmed, not a ripple stirred in her eyes. So now you regret it? She said calmly. Carter, you betrayed not just your wife, but someone you can't afford to offend. Carter's body visibly jerked, then he glared fiercely at Lynn's father. You two colluded all along. Colluded? Lynn's father sneered coldly. If I'd truly known she was my daughter, would I have let you use her life as a scapegoat? At that moment, Demi completely lost control, lying in the police car and wailing with heart-wrenching cries. It can't be. Carter. You said you only loved me. You promised to make me the most glamorous CEO's wife. You can't abandon me. Carter was too weak to respond. His hands were pinned behind his back, his body restrained by the officers. The voices around him grew increasingly muffled. The only thing that remained clear was Bonnie's merciless gaze. Carter, the moment you sent me to prison, I ceased to be a pawn in your game, Bonnie said coldly. Now it's time for you to pay. The police car slowly pulled away from the Lynn family villa. Under the night sky, the flashing red and blue lights cast a particularly ironic light on Carter and Demi's fate. Mrs. Lynn finally couldn't hold back any longer. She gently took Bonnie's hand. Bonnie, you've suffered. Bonnie didn't respond. She lifted her head to gaze at the sky, her eyes deep and intense. This wasn't the end. True revenge had only just begun. Bonnie stood on the balcony of the Lynn family villa, watching the police car gradually disappear into the night. Her gaze was like a quiet, sharp blade. The capture of Carter and Demi was not the end of her revenge, but the true beginning of the curtain rising. Bonnie. Mr. Lynn stepped forward, his expression complex. If you wish, everything belonging to the Lynn group is yours. Bonnie merely smiled calmly. I didn't return for this company. Then what do you want? Mrs. Lynn couldn't help asking. I want everything they have. Her tone was soft yet icy cold. Not just legal punishment, I want their reputations destroyed, their credit ruined, their loved ones abandoned, and everyone turn against them. Mr. and Mrs. Lynn fell silent. This wasn't the daughter they knew. But who could blame her? The injustice of being sent to the executioner's block by her own hand, the loss of everything, it couldn't be dismissed with a simple "it's over." Meanwhile, Demi, confined to a hospital ward far away, completely broke down. I want to see Carter. What right do you have to lock me up? I didn't kill anyone. I didn't commit a crime. Her hair was disheveled, she was tearing at her hospital gown, and her eyes were bloodshot. You participated in forging contracts, setting up money laundering channels, and destroying evidence. Did you really think we couldn't get proof on you? The female officer coldly tossed a document onto the table. You and Carter have been accomplices for a long time. That bitch Bonnie, how could she be alive? Demi's lips trembled as she muttered, she shouldn't be alive. If she were dead, Carter could marry me. We had it all planned out. Just then, a steady voice rang out, did you really think your plan was flawless? The door swung open, revealing Bonnie. She had changed into a sleek black trench coat, her hair neatly pulled back. Her eyes held no trace of hatred, only utter resolve. Demi, you must be dying to know how I survived. Demi was struck dumb, her mouth opening and closing without sound. I'm pregnant. Bonnie's lips curled into a smirk. You know what that means? It means I'm eligible for a stay of execution. And it means I have time to uncover the truth. Demi finally understood that the prenatal exam report she had dismissed as Bonnie's last-ditch struggle for survival was actually her first trump card for self-rescue. And now, Bonnie said slowly as she approached her hospital bed and looked down at her, I have a second one. She continued, that surveillance footage you thought was destroyed? I restored it long ago. Demi slumped back in her chair, eyes wide. Impossible, Carter smashed that hard drive to pieces. Data can be recovered from fragments. You forgot, I majored in information engineering. Bonnie whispered softly, you admitted it on surveillance, how you framed me, how you drove the accountant to suicide, how you traded love for Carter's resources. You said it yourself. At that moment, Demi's face turned as pale as paper. She slumped down, tears streaming down her cheeks. Bonnie stood up, gazing at this once close friend. A cold smile curled her lips. Don't worry, she said. I won't kill you. I want you in prison, watching yourself become a pariah day by day. Meanwhile, the media was abuzz. A major twist in the Carter money laundering case. Ex-wife Bonnie acquitted as surveillance footage reveals the truth, while Demi, implicated in the case, was also arrested. Once hailed as the perfect goddess, Bonnie has now become the key figure exposing the financial underworld. Bonnie sat calmly in her office, watching the major news ticker scroll by. She knew this was only the beginning. Those who had once looked down on her, who had stepped on her to climb higher, would all pay the price. She gently stroked her slightly rounded belly, her gaze softening slightly. Little one, we won. Morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Lynn Group building, bathing Bonnie in a halo of sacred radiance. Standing at the center of the CEO's office, she wore a crisp white suit with cool elegance. Her expression was detached yet radiated an air of absolute confidence and control. This position was once Carter's dream. Now, it has become everything she reclaimed with her own hands. Demi's sentence was officially handed down, 30 years for participating in evidence tampering, aiding money laundering, and intentionally causing the death of a witness. The moonlight who once stole all her glory under the spotlight can now barely touch the sun. As for Carter, he He was sentenced to death for his involvement in a joint money laundering scheme and fraud charges. At the end of the trial, he glanced at Bonnie. That glance held regret, fear, and resignation. But Bonnie did not return his gaze. He and Demi had long ceased to deserve any of her feelings. Bonnie quietly moved out of the Lynn family villa and settled into a secluded cottage by the sea. She no longer needed to stand in anyone's shadow, neither as Carter's dutiful wife nor as the Lynn family's heir. She lived only for herself. Each morning, she sat on a wooden chair by the sea, watching the tides rise and fall, gently caressing the increasingly noticeable curve of her belly. For the first time, she felt true peace within her heart. As for this child, she actually has no connection to Carter whatsoever. She was conceived through artificial insemination using genes from the World Elite Gene Bank, arranged by Bonnie through a friend. Baby, Mom has finally fought to reclaim a clean world for you. During an internal meeting at the Lynn Group, someone tentatively asked, President Lynn, do you have any plans to return and take over the group's operations? Bonnie merely smiled faintly. In my life, I once sacrificed for my family, then fought desperately to clear my name. Now, I just want to be myself. But you're just too talented, the whole market is waiting for your return. She closed the file without a flicker of emotion. I'm back, but I'm no longer the Bonnie whose life was dictated for her. I'm living for myself now. She rose and left, leaving the room in stunned silence. They had assumed she would cling to power, but she no longer belonged to anyone's script. She was the writer of her own destiny. Several months later, the baby was born safely, a boy with dark hair and dark eyes, looking just like her. When the nurse placed the infant in her arms, a single tear slipped silently down her cheek. She knew the child's name had been chosen long ago. George. May he never again endure the trials she faced. That night, under the moonlight, she wrote a letter to her future self. You once had nothing, and you were once scarred beyond recognition. Yet you gritted your teeth and walked through every darkest night. Remember, you don't live to forgive the world, you live to raise your child and live well. Bonnie. Demi lost her mind in prison, while Carter became a prisoner everyone avoided. And Bonnie, cradling her child, stepped into the morning light that belonged to her. She had lost love, family, trust, even nearly lost her life. Yet in the end, she prevailed. Not because fate smiled upon her, but because she refused to give up.